This reading is for Sarah. It is 10:29 p.m. on October 26th. I'm Melissa. Hi, nice to meet you. So I am going to go ahead and start this reading by introducing myself a little bit. First, this is sort of a new format. I usually offer a long document, but I think that my clients are more receptive to video over having to read 20 or 30 pages. So I wanted to give this a shot, and also it kind of gives you some insight onto what I'm doing here. So I am a Sansei Espiritista. I have been practicing some form of spiritual practice since I was about 15, with a gap in the middle. I started practicing again a few years ago. I eventually stumbled on Sansei, and that is a Puerto Rican form of voodoo. I'm Puerto Rican and Cuban, and it really resonated with me and with the stuff that I was already doing in my practice. So that is how I started getting into what I do here and working in the spirit world to help people find their guides, which is what I'm going to do with you. And all of these cards here are meaningful to me, and this is what I pulled for you. But first, I want to start with the intuitive reading part of this process. So I sat down and I plugged your birthday into my head and did your numerology based on that, and then I ascertained that you are kind of vibing at the level of spirit for transformation and expansion. So it's pretty high in terms of where you resonate. Spirit has a lot of different levels, and this is one of the upper levels, actually two of the upper levels, that you are sort of most able to resonate with. So that tells me that you're high mental and high empath, which high mental means that you are a mental intuitive, somebody who can see intuitive things and patterns, who might use, for instance, spreadsheets in their practice over magic books. Somebody who's tries to be very organized, and who connects with spirit via thought patterns more than spiritual ascension or other methods, which would probably make you pretty good at meditation, which is a good one. And it doesn't hinder your ascension to be a high mental intuitive. If you're doing the right things that a mental intuitive should be able to do, you're still making that same progress. And in your case, you've ascended in spirit to a pretty high frequency. So I think your progress has been pretty good on that front. So with that said, I did a bit of an intuitive reading, and when I was reading you, what I saw was a woman in a white robe kind of dancing and playing and chasing around a small child, and the child was a boy. And this was like a deity type energy. So I was looking for, I just put into Google, because she had a water all around her. So I had assumed that she was a water deity, and I put into Google water deity in white. And the first thing that I saw when I did that was, let me see how to pronounce this. I want to say it's Leucothea. And this seems to be spot on. Leucothea, yes. So Leucothea is your deity energy, and she is part of an old Greek pantheon, and she is a sea nymph and a sea deity. And her story is she's sometimes called the white goddess. That's what Leucothea actually means. And that's a reference to how she's sometimes pictured in white. She was a sea goddess who came to the aid of sailors in distress. Once mortal named Ino, a daughter of King Cadmus of Thebes, she and her husband Athamas incurred the wrath of Hera when they fostered the infant god of Dionysus. As punishment, the goddess drove Athamas into a murderous rage, and he slew his eldest child. Ino then grabbed the other, and in her flight leapt off a cliff into the sea. The pair were welcomed into the company of sea gods and renamed Leucothea, the white goddess, and Palemon, that was her son. So, who I saw in your personal spiritual bubble, the deity energy that's trying to reach you is this sea nymph, the goddess Leucothea, and her son Palemon. And they both came up in this reading here as well. So that kind of confirmed what I was seeing. The Romans synced her with a goddess called Mater Matuta. She's commonly associated with the sea. So that's why I was seeing all the water, and I kind of had this idea that we were talking about some sort of sea goddess or water goddess in my visual. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I needed to mention here. Music and dancing. She's fond of music and dancing. She's fond of mushrooms. Doesn't have to be the psychedelic ones, but you know, to each their own. But she was showing me mushrooms, and this is kind of typical with somebody who comes across as a nymph or some kind of fae goddess. There's usually some kind of earth plant or offering that they like, and so I don't think you can go wrong with offering mushrooms to her, or doing anything that involves music and movement. Maybe even meditation that involves music and movement. So that's about that's what I call your big guide energy. And usually when I do these readings, what I see is a big guide energy and a middle guide. So a lot of times in the intuitive reading, I will get a big guide energy like I did here, and then I'll be able to look at my cards and kind of reinforce, like I'm doing here, what the big guide energy is. And other times I also see a human spirit, and if I don't see a human spirit, they'll often pop up in the cards. So that's what actually happened here. I did not come across a human spirit when I did my intuitive reading, but middle guides are usually there to help you to reach your big guides. And so in your case, you do have a human spirit middle guide, and so we'll talk about that too. And these are all energies that are in your sphere of influence. Let me spell out the names of these deities for you in the video before we move on from them. Leucothea is Leukothea in Greek, or I think more commonly seen Leucothea in Latin. Palemon is Palaimon in Greek. Palaemon in Latin. Okay, so those are the two names that they might be identified by, in addition to being synced to Mater Matuta. And sort of both of them coincide with, not coincide with, both of them have intersections with Odysseus and Poseidon, even though they aren't specifically related to Odysseus and Poseidon. They have like mythic interactions with him. So if you look up Leucothea, you should be able to come across a little more about her and her son, who I saw together and happy in spirit before they returned to the sea. So here I have a reading, and this is what shows me, what I see here is 3 phases. Just looks like a mess of cards to you probably, but I've got it broken up into 3 phases. So the first phase should be your current phase, and it's represented by the rabbit. It's actually the hare of the Druid Animal Oracle. And the hare brings traditionally feminine qualities, nurturing, self-care. Self-care is a big thing under the hare. So this time, and I think for a lot of us going through 2020, this needs to be a time of self-nurturing and self-care. And the reason why you're seeing this bunny pop up here in this first phase of trying to connect with these spirit deities is because the first phase in trying to connect is sort of dealing with what's going on with you currently. And usually that includes a lot of shadow work, and shadow work being your ability to kind of look into yourself and discover what it is that you need to integrate, what it is that you need to come to terms with, what it is that you need to cord cut, those kinds of things. So that's what we're seeing here. We see the devil card pulled, and that usually indicates vices and a need for shadow work. So you've got kind of got four concerns going on here. You've got vices, you've got a lack of stability, which I think we all have a lack of stability, but for whatever reason, there's a lack of stability in your life right now that is really pushing on you. You've got feeling like you're weak, and you've got money, financial troubles, disharmony in terms of either finances or worldly possessions, worldly materials, something in the physical world that is just going very disharmoniously. So the first step to connecting to these two, Leucothea and her son, who are represented here, is to kind of deal with that in any way you can. And my suggestion is always to try meditation. I think shadow work works really well with visual meditation, when you can visualize your inner demons and skeletons in your closet and ask them to come to tea with you and kind of sit down and visualize that interaction. You have a couple things in the physical world that you also need to work on, and maybe you need support from support systems like family members or therapists or whomever in your life, and getting all of that support in line and in order is going to be helpful for you throughout this journey. In the second part of your journey, sorry, my cat is on my altar behind me. In the second part of your journey, you are trying to unblock to work with a male ancestor. So the King of Swords reversed is showing me like a blocked ancestor. The Hangman kind of explains it because you feel pulled in different directions and you need to gain some perspective so that you can flip this card around. The era that it's in is good for connecting with these two. So the first step I would recommend to connecting with these two is to work with the ancestor. We're seeing the ancestor feeling blocked here and your need for perspective. But if you get that perspective that the Hangman is telling you about, then you should be able to flip that card around and unblock the ancestor. And the stag here is a really good sign that once you do, you'll connect with your deity energy. In this third part of your journey, we have the wolf. And the wolf brings cunning and prosperity and intellect. So it, to me, seems like, and this is the phase where you're kind of figuring things out for yourself. And it's going to take you through kind of working this path before you finish the shadow work, before you finish getting yourself organized and feel like you can connect and get yourself in order. In this third phase, you do connect, indicated by the Two of Cups, but it's not easy. In fact, it comes at an emotional cost, potentially maybe doing some personal work that has some negative feelings associated with it, or trauma or hardship. So the Ten of Swords is just telling you to be prepared for that. Along your way, you have different angel energies that are connected with the realms of spirit that you can access. And so in my reading, I'm pulling up Sandalphon, who is associated with manifesting, which means if you are trying to manifest something right now, include Sandalphon in that manifestation. He's an archangel, and he is the archangel associated with the realm of manifestation, and also include protection, because that realm can be a little tricky. Michael and Gabriel. And sometimes, and this is an interesting tidbit, and I think I picked up a little bit of this with you. Sometimes Gabriel can also indicate a potential relationship with Hecate, and since you're already in this Greek pantheon, with Leucothea and her son, you may have some Hecate energy kind of hanging around there too, if you felt that, and you may want to explore it. But definitely the main guides trying to get your attention are Leucothea and her son. You may already work with Hecate, I don't know, but I'm just kind of pulling a little bit of that energy, and this is what you need to focus on. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. What I usually advise people to do is to get their altar together with the right correspondences, which I'm going to share with you. And also to meditate if you can. And when you do your meditations, I like to call it an astral residence, is what I recommend people start to create. So when you create an astral residence, what you want to do is you want to visualize every corner and every inch of that residence, and you want it to have all the stuff that you normally use in your practice anyway. If you have ancestral candles that you like to light, if you do a lot of candle magic, or you work with crystals, or you work with tarot cards, or whatever the case may be, you want to have those things available to you at your astral residence, as well as things like bath, if you do bath magic, or a kitchen. I like to have a kitchen in mine because I like to wash, you know, herbs and things in my practice in my kitchen sink. So I want to have a kitchen sink in my astral residence so I can replicate my practice in my astral residence. And that is how I use it. But it's also a great place to meet up with your guides. So if you're wondering how to connect with Leucothea and her son, who I'm going to refer to as and her son throughout this, just because that name is hard. But if you want to connect with her, if you can create an astral residence by creating this mental image that you imprint into your psyche, so that you can return to it over and over and over and over and over again. Eventually, during these meditations where you visually go to this place, you can access portals to your guides, and that's how I do it as an espiritista. I meditate a lot. I have access to some different portals, and I reach my guides, and my ancestors and spirit guides and things, they know that they can reach me in my astral residence. So I have ancestors there a lot of the time who are hanging out, and it started with me just kind of creating this place and meditating to it often. So I recommend that for everybody. And if you do that, you want to have the right protection, which would be obsidian and hematite and amethyst. That's the best stuff that you can use when you're meditating. Hematite is great for clearing all of your energy centers. Amethyst is for psychic protection, and that's super important when you're getting ready to do anything astral, is to have that psychic protection. And obsidian is also a protection, more of a physically grounding protective stone. So I like to keep all of those on me when I'm doing anything astral. And just in general, when I practice, I like to keep that on me as well. So I think that investment in those stones would be good. What else? Okay, so here is the correspondences that you need to think about when you're doing your altar. In addition to finding either like prayer cards or altar statues that represent these deities, because I always recommend having some sort of image that's important to you that represents them, you can use anything fire element on your altar, and of course water element for these specific deities, but the high mental realm of expansion, which is where you resonate, is a fire realm. So anything fire oriented will help you ascend to that realm. Also the colors soft blue, pearlescent, gray, iridescent. For gemstones, in addition to the ones I told you for psychic protection, there's also ruby, turquoise, and jade that you may want to have on your altar. As far as incense goes, amaranth would be a good one, anything musky, and even maybe some wormwood. Metal, anything platinum. And that's it, I think, in terms of what you put on your altar, in addition to giving offerings to your deities. And I see mushrooms being a good offering. maybe wormwood too, which I had already mentioned. Yeah, so those will do you good. If you put that stuff on your altar, then you should be headed toward two things. First, your ascension to this high mental realm of expansion, which is more like expanding your mind, expanding your perception, and that's where some of these correspondents are geared at getting you, is to be able to ascend in your practice. And then the other set of correspondence kind of mixed in there is stuff that's specific to the deity, so that you're honoring them along the way. And one thing I would just advise is that on the way to this part of spirit, this mental part of spirit where you are most connected to spirit in the best way, you're going to come across this transformation realm. And in your numerology, this realm of transformation could be a little sticky for you. So, and I think also with your deity associations, it's going to be around the time that you hit the realm of transformation that you connect with these deities, because the transformation realm is actually associated with the deities, which are like queens of the night and the moon deities, and things like that. So when you hit transformation, it is kind of this abysmal level of spirit. You don't necessarily see all this, like you're not going to necessarily float around and see abysmal, but it may feel like you are floating around like in spirit or accessing spirit more than you would like to be. And so in those cases, if you ever feel I don't know how to describe this, a little bit like flighty or like lightheaded or disoriented by your abilities, you might be in this sort of place that's easy to kind of get stuck in, and you'll want to really work on those altar correspondences that I gave you, the ascension ones, like your musk incense, your blue, pearl, gray, iridescent colors, those kinds of things. And you'll want to work with the angel Raziel to try to move out of that transformation level, and the angel Uriel. They're both really good for that. So you want to work with Uriel and Raziel to try to move up to this expansion realm in spirit. And so when I talk about the realms, or I say expansion and transformation, I'm talking both about those activities, like the concept of expanding and transforming your perspective, and the level of spirit that it corresponds with. And each level of spirit's a little bit different. So the transformation realm is kind of easy to get stuck in, and the way that your numerology works out, it's even easier for you to get stuck in. So I would just be kind of aware of that when you're trying to move to this expansion place, that if you feel like you kind of hit this roadblock and you're not expanding anymore, it might be time to work with Uriel and Raziel to try to jump up to the next realm, which is expansion. You can email me if you have questions, melissa@floodwitch.com. I think that pretty much wraps it up for me. But let me know what you think about this new format, and I'm going to give it a go. All right, thanks so much for your business, and I'll talk to you soon.